Tonight's story is The Naughty Boy by Hans Christian Andersen. There was once an old poet, such a nice, kindly old poet. He was sitting at home one evening when a dreadful storm broke out. The rain came pouring down, but the old poet sat snug and warm by his fireside, where the flames were leaping and the roasting apples were hissing. "They won't have a dry stitch left, the poor things that are out in this weather," he said, for he was such a kindly poet. "Please let me in, I'm so cold and wet," cried a little child outside, and he stood weeping and knocking at the door, while the rain came pouring down and the wind rattled every window. "Poor little fellow," said the old poet, going to open the door. Standing outside was a little boy. He was all naked, and water was streaming from his long golden hair. He was shivering with cold. If he hadn't been let in, he must certainly have died in that dreadful storm. "Poor little fellow," said the old poet, taking him by the hand. "Come along to me, and I'll soon have you warm. You shall have some wine and an apple. You're such a lovely boy." And he was indeed. His eyes were like two bright stars, and though water was running down his golden hair, it had such beautiful curls. He looked like a little angel, but was pale with cold and shivering in every limb. In his hand he had a lovely bow, but the right had quite spoiled it, and all the colors of its pretty arrows had run in the wet. Sitting down by the fire, the old poet took the little boy on his knee, wrung his hair dry, warmed his hands in his own, and heated some sweet wine for him. Soon he was better. He had rosy cheeks and jumped onto the floor and skipped and danced around the old poet. "You're a jolly boy," said the old poet. "What do they call you?" "They call me Cupid," he replied. "Don't you know me? Look, there's my bow. I can shoot with that, you know. Look, the weather's clearing up now. The moon's coming out." "But your bow's spoilt," said the old poet. "What a pity," said the little boy, picking it up and looking at it. "Why, it's already dry and none the worse. The string's perfectly tight. I'll try it." And drawing his bow, he put an arrow in it, took aim, and shot the kindly old poet right through the heart. "There, you see, my bow wasn't spoilt," he said, and with a loud laugh he ran off. The naughty boy, to shoot the old poet who had taken him into his warm room and been so good to him and given him the lovely wine and his best apple. The kindly poet lay on the floor crying. He really had been shot through the heart, and he said, "For shame! What a naughty boy that Cupid is! I'm going to tell this to all the good children I know, so they can beware of him and never play with him, or he'll do them harm." All the good children, the girls and the boys, to whom he told the story, took good care to avoid the wicked Cupid, but he deceived them all the same. He's such a cunning one. When students are leaving their lectures, he'll run alongside them, carrying a book under his arm and wearing a black gown. They never know him, and so they take him by the arm, thinking that he's another student. Then he shoots his arrow into their hearts. When the young women leave their confirmation classes, and when they're in church being confirmed, he's on the lookout for them too. Why, he's on the lookout for people all the time. He'll sit up in the big chandelier at the theater, burning brightly to make people think he's a lamp. Only later they learn better. He runs about the park and on the promenade. Why, he once shot your father and mother through the heart. Just you ask them and see what they say. Oh, he's a bad boy, that Cupid. Don't you ever have anything to do with him. He's after everybody. Just fancy, he even shot an arrow into your old grandmother. Only it's a long time ago, and she's got over it. But it isn't the sort of thing she'll ever forget. Shame on him. That wicked Cupid. But now you know him, and what a naughty boy he is. That was the end of The Naughty Boy by Hans Christian Andersen. Thank you so much for listening. Good night, everybody.